today.
Thank you very much, Shocks. Greetings, all you esports admirers. I'm Devin Pyrotechnics Young, and I'm here with the Welsh Wizard of Predictions himself. It's Andrew Vedius Day.
Hello, Pyro. How are you doing this fine day?
That's my line. I'm doing excellent, man. I'm ready for a battle of these two teams, 6th and 7th place. It is really close, as said on the desk. Roccat pretty much needs this one if they want a reasonable chance of making playoffs.
Yes.
Splyce, they're on the cusp, man.
Yes, they do. And Splyce last split, they were kind of fighting for 3rd, 2nd, 4th place last split. They were kind of sitting towards the top of the standings, but this split has not been as clean for them. They struggled at the beginning to kind of adapt to the meta, and now they've reached to a point where with the meta changing once again, they feel pretty comfortable. But for Roccat, they suffered a 0-2 last week. We heard the analysts talking about it, and this week, it's kind of do or die for them. Let's see what they can bring out. Will they stick to the early game style that they found so much success with, or will they go more towards a late game, which we saw last week against Schalke?
Very true. Now, we also have to keep in mind that with a bit of changing meta, as you mentioned, patch 8.15, it drops today in the European LCS. So we'll see what differences come through here. So far in the bans, nothing too surprising.
Immediate Zoe ban going towards Nisqy, something that we often see for Splyce as an early priority on their mid lane champion. And already we're seeing more target bans go towards some of the key carry players like Odoamne, like Nisqy, with the Rumble and Zoe taken off the board.
You could say the same thing about the Roccat. Norscarin, a big playmaking support champion as well for him. So we'll see what Roccat continue to do. There's the Aatrox ban. It's on the blue side, though.
Interestingly, Roccat are saying here that we don't want to prioritize grabbing ourselves the Aatrox. Splyce looking to take away both junglers that are currently very strong still on 8.15.
Oh, now Vedi, Akali is open. This is the
I don't think
made
you
the
first
change
picker.
on April
I
50.
don't
Is not a first
think
pick
you
champion?
first picker.
All right. We got a
Very
Varus.
risky.
We got a Varus.
She does have quite a lot of weak lane matchups. If she does get picked, we can talk a little bit more about it, but neither of these mid laners really feel like Akali players to me. They're much more geared towards the control mages, more towards the utility. Orianna wouldn't be a surprising first pick if you're Splyce right now, given that it is something Nisqy has a lot of comfort on.
It does seem like Splyce do opt for those early mid lane pickups as well, so we'll see if that continues. We've already got a Trundle locked in, so that comes in there for Xerxes most likely, and still some time on the board. What are they going to be looking to do with this champion, and what do you think they're going to add to it?
With the Trundle, well, I think it's a relatively safe blind pick in the current meta, given that some of the default junglers are things like Sejuani and Gragas. Trundle typically does well into both, and you kind of force Mentor onto a carry, but he's the kind of jungler that doesn't really care if he has to play a carry. Camille has been one of his most successful junglers throughout the split, but instead, he's going towards the tanks, which is very surprising to me. This is not how Roccat have typically found success in the past.
Yeah, it's a good point. You talked about preffing carries. Well, he's just almost exclusively played them. The Sejuani, a couple of standout games, but not a whole lot of success for Roccat. They also pair up Norscarin's Braum, which is an old favorite of his. But we're already back into Splyce, and that's a quick pickup on the Gnar for Odoamne, trying to get him a preferable lane matchup as well.
Now, it does look, what Splyce can do in the second half of the draft is just ban away strong top laners. We can see the cannon ban. Jace could be another one thrown towards Prophet. Jarvan potentially, we'll have to wait and see. But the thing is here is that Splyce haven't locked their mid laner in yet. Now, one of the big things about this patch is that Syndra was buffed. And while Orianna last patch could have been quite a safe blind pick, Syndra was something that we often saw as an answer. So I think Splyce are a little afraid to lock it in right now because they are afraid that Blanc would look to pick something like that up, give him a winning lane matchup, and then they can look to have control through that mid lane.
Yeah. Not a lot of things really phase Splyce's mid laner, but apparently some of the changes now on this patch and going up against Blank, definitely giving him some pause, taking their mid laner later on. Now, we're still into this second ban phase. We'll see if Splyce continue to try and eliminate some of those counter picks up in the top side.
Now, Roccat have kind of drafted themselves already pretty solid team fight fundamentals. You have good engage with the Sejuani, you have solid follow-up with the Varus ultimate, you have good peel with the Braum, kind of everything's coming together in terms of what looks like scaling and team fighting. For Splyce, they've got a little bit more of that split push air going about them. You have the Gnar off on the side lane, you're expecting him to have a winning matchup with the cannon band away, you're trying to force Roccat onto a tank so that he can have that advantage. And it wouldn't surprise me if they locked in something like an Ezreal right now, something safe. Oh, my apologies, Ezreal already banned away. Could also be the Jhin, another big comfort pick for Kobe. And just something safe with the Tahm Kench. They don't really need to play around, but can just hold the mid lane, provide a lot of wave clear, and then they set themselves up to grab another split pusher as their final pick.
Right, so now the Ashe is the one that comes in instead of the Jhin. This is seemingly low. It's going to be a fairly safe champion. It can set them up for some big pick plays across the map, but it does seem to play into the Splyce split push style.
What I love about it is you already talked about the pick potential. When you are playing that 1-3-1, having it is very valuable. But also, this roster was lacking engage. With a Trundle locked in, a Tahm Kench, and a Gnar, they needed that ability to start a fight to come from somewhere. Ashe Arrow is a perfect way to kick things off. So I like that quick adaptation from Splyce. And I believe this is the first time we're going to be seeing Kobe on that Ashe this split.
All right, so Roccat, last couple of picks coming in from them. We see Blank going for a more scaling champion in the Azir. So Roccat already seemed to be going for a little bit more of the late game, and I wonder, does this worry you? Deficio was talking about how this is something Roccat shouldn't be doing against Splyce.
I agree. I think it's a dangerous path to take. Ornn does offer more engage. You can see very much more towards the team fighting. The thing about this Azir was a big pick for Blanc last split. He found a lot of great plays on it. It was one of his best performing champions, and he's going to be picking it so far blind. He doesn't know what he's going to be playing it into. With Zoe taken off the board and Orianna as well, it's likely that he's not going to get hard counters unless Nisqy suddenly decides to play Echo, which could fit into this 1-3-1 style, but I feel like that's not the kind of champion that Nisqy likes to play.
He waits till the last second, locks in the LeBlanc though, so Nisqy, all right, I think he just wants to delete people and 1-3-1.
So he's looking to get that winning matchup in the laning phase. It synergizes nicely with the 1-3-1 that they already have. They've got the engage from the Ashe too. Splyce trying to divide and conquer Roccat. You heard the analysts talking a little bit about how last week Roccat really struggled when teams would split push against them because they didn't know how to allocate their pressure. Splyce are looking to try and replicate that setup where you have LeBlanc sitting off on a side lane, you have Gnar sitting off on the other side lane, and you force Roccat to divide. In order to get there though, you need an early game lead Pyra, and Splyce are one of our worst early game league teams in the league. So for them to find this will definitely be a big move away from the typical playstyle that they found success with so far this split.
I find this fascinating. Both teams kind of delving a little bit outside their comfort zone in, as was said in the interview, possibly one of the most important games of the season, I think for both teams in all honesty, because there are big playoff stakes on the line. For Roccat, reasonably, it's very hard for you to make it into playoffs if you don't win this game. You lose it, the head-to-head against Splyce, but of course for Splyce, if you drop, you have the risk of falling out of that top 6 already, and that's a momentum killer right there. So we'll see if Splyce is able to make it happen. Early game is going to be so critical in this one, in this race for the playoffs. Vedius, I think we're going to get a hell of a lot of action early on.
Well, I feel like early on, the emphasis is put on Splyce to make that action happen. Roccat just want to sit back, they want to farm, they want to scale. Trying to force plays would be very dangerous for them, given how much stronger Splyce is in the early stages of the game. This is an extremely important game for both these teams. Both of them want to make it to playoffs. Likely that both of them won't. So a win here will be a big contributor in making it into top 6.
It may very well be that there can be only one. Let's keep an eye, especially on this mid lane matchup, Nisqy versus Blank. So far, nothing crazy, but as you mentioned, Splyce, it's going to be onus on them to make something happen in game.
So we wanted to take a quick opportunity to talk a little bit about what has happened recently for these two teams, because a lot of emphasis has been put on the fact that recently Roccat have struggled, and they went on this wonderful kind of running theme.
Speaking of running themes, I like this chant. Kudos to the fans, but Vedius, back to your point about a running theme.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a second to appreciate the fans showing their support. Absolutely love that kind of involvement with the team. They're going to need it today because we look back at the last couple of games, right? Schalke and Giants last week were two big opponents that were very close to them in the standings, and they needed to find those wins. Unfortunately, they could not do it. As you guys can see, we are dealing with a bit of a pause. It does look like that it is an issue with Profit, currently speaking to the referee, but it gives us more time to talk about what I've been trying to say. And for Roccat, they lost their last 2 games against very important matchups, Giants and Schalke. And those are 2 games that they could have won. You look back, you see how they played. For Roccat, they had a huge lead over Giants, and they threw it in the late game. They got outsplit pushed in the end. And against Schalke, things looked pretty decent for them, trading back and forth a lot of kills, but a couple of crucial mistakes ended up costing them the game. And the fact that they lost those games means that they fall behind Splyce and made this game so much more important. And that's what you saw on their faces last week, how devastated they look, how upset they were.
It's obvious. It's raw emotion at that point when you were so close to being able to win the game, not just once, but twice, and then you get put in a situation where you're just out of playoffs. Now, to give you guys a little update on what's going on, the pause is definitely related to Prophet, who is reporting inability to use his trinket right now, so league officials are investigating on stage. Yeah, it's something you want to make sure is right. You want to get your trinkets going early.
It would be valuable to use your trinket, especially in the early levels.
It's a good check, man. Vision is very important. You want to be able to get it down.
So while that issue gets resolved, thank you, crowd, once again, for making up these wonderful chants.
Yeah, you guys are the best.
We will, I believe the term is we will rock at.
I think that was what they were saying.
That's what I heard.
You can hear through your headphones, I'm glad.
Just about, yeah. And again, that kind of support is wonderful to see because Roccat, we heard it from Freddy. They've shown a lot of growth throughout the year. And coming into this split, they kind of wanted to do a little better than last split. They didn't want to get 3-0'd in the quarterfinals. They wanted to make it to playoffs and challenge. And the fact that they are struggling so much is certainly going to be a devastating blow for this lineup. Whereas for Splyce, they kind of want to go back to where they were in terms of that third place spot. They have a long way to go to challenge it, but securing a playoff spot is that first step.
Very, very true. And it looks like we are going to be heading back into game in just a moment. But I want to touch on your point about the Roccat fan base and about how much support this team receives, because this is a team that has been in the European LCS for a long time. We've seen so many iterations from them, but in the last couple of years especially, they've been kind of known as this talent factory. They've taken players that didn't necessarily have the biggest names all across the board, and they've actually really turned them into some impressive teams. And this iteration of Roccat, this is the first time in a while that we've really had serious expectations. Freddie was talking about it earlier, that they came into the spring split keeping those kind of low. They made the playoffs against all odds, and they're trying to do it again when everyone is expecting them to make it. We are back into the game.
So this gives us a bit of an opportunity now to talk a little bit more about the matchup, Spyro. We do see LeBlanc versus Azir, a matchup that many people probably don't often see. We haven't seen it for a while. LeBlanc is pretty powerful in the early game. You're going to notice that she jumps on you with a W. She's going to do a decent amount of damage. But with those soldiers out, Azir can trade back pretty well at level 1. The moment you hit level 2 is where things start to get a little scarier, because the combined damage of the Sigil of Manus plus Distortion combo from LeBlanc can really chunk you out. The problem here for Niski is that he got forced away from the wave. Blanc has now gone level 2. This gives him early push over the LeBlanc, and now she's going to be forced under tower and is going to lose a little bit of that pressure. I wonder if Blanc is going to look to go back to base, and note that he has decided to go for the Corrupting Potion. That's the Badger. And you'll also note in his rune choices that he's decided to go for the Inspiration Tree, and that's because he's going to go for the rune choice that gives you bonus regeneration on your potions.
Right.
And it's very, very valuable when you're going up against these strong laners, and would highly recommend players at home consider doing the same, because it's all about surviving. And that's what Blanc is largely looking to do. And you can see in these early levels, he got that early level lead, and he's been able to have a healthy farm so far in the first couple minutes of the game.
Yeah, he's not just surviving, he's actually managing to thrive here in this matchup that Niski should have the edge in, but the Sand Soldier poke is starting to become a little bit of a threat there to Niski. We saw earlier that there was a little bit of jungle back and forth. I don't know if Xerxes was expecting Memento to be in that place at the time, and Memento was actually the one that came up with more damage earlier trade up against this Trundle, whose specialty is kind of dueling the enemy junglers early on.
Yeah, and I feel like that one of the reasons why Xerxes was hesitant to go for that trade was because he did see that Blanc had pressure in the middle lane, so he was a little bit worried about committing in the event that he would end up in a 2 versus 1 situation, and that early into the game, you're always going to lose that, so just decided to back off. Smart play there from Xerxes, but remember, he's going to be one of the important factors to enable this early game from Splyce. One of the advantages that LeBlanc will have in this game is that she is running the teleport. So even though she did get forced back early, she can very quickly rejoin the lane. And now she's got a bit of a freeze going on. Has picked up that very early Dark Seal. Blanc doing the same. And that kind of adds to the regeneration that we were talking about a little bit earlier, where you do get that bonus healing from your potions and stuff. So it's interesting that we are seeing it from Niski, but he kind of expected to get poked back as well. And now he's utilizing the teleport to remove some of that pressure.
Yeah, and to try and get back a little bit for himself. So, pointed out that this was a matchup that he should have the edge in, but Blanc has actually been holding his own pretty effectively. I do like that they've kind of mirrored in the builds as well, so it shouldn't be as easy for them to get in lethal range for an early gank off. But speaking of ganks and junglers, Memento, we're going to look for more of that at level 6, and it is curious that he's changed up his strategy, changed his style a little bit as Kabi gets poked very low here in the bottom lane. And Memento, he has been much more of a carry player, but clearly that's not what the team wanted this time.
Yeah, they have gone much more towards the team fighting. They're expecting this to go to late game. It surprises me that they weren't confident in their ability to find an early game lead and then look to close things out, because you look back to very early on in the split, and that's exactly how Memento and the team were finding a lot of their wins. But instead, they're going for this team fight style. They did it up versus Schalke, and they found one good fight in the late game. They had that 5-man shockwave from Blank. They looked like they could turn it around, but then, again, a couple poor choices, and they weren't able to pull it off, which is why Deficia was saying, you can't go to late game if you're Roccat. Splyce are the better late game team, and even though Roccat have the stronger 5v5 in the late game, in a 1v1 scenario, Splyce will have the edge. Odoamne in the side lane, he will beat anyone on that lineup 1v1. Same for Niski. The LeBlanc in the late game in a 1v1 is absolutely fine. So their ability to display split push will always be relevant throughout the game.
Right. Now, Splyce, they definitely look a lot more at home in the late game for the most part as Niski finds a route off onto Blank. Little quick pop onto the barrier. Now, Memento is found up by Xerxes, flashing that pillar. So Xerxes kind of gets him back for earlier, but let's talk a little bit about... Oh, Kasing. Ooh, buddy, you got to be careful here. I was saying Splyce are comfy in the late game. They're not so comfy in the early game. As you mentioned earlier, this is one of our worst teams in the early stages of the game. So it's kind of interesting that they pick some of these laning matchups that they should be winning for, and they are still kind of falling a little bit behind despite having the gold lead.
Yeah, this is definitely a move away from the typical style that Splyce have found their wins with so far this split. And I was going to talk about how Splyce are a team that hasn't really changed from spring, because this is exactly what they were like throughout the entire regular season, and it works nicely for them. They found a couple of early game advantages, but then the game would readily slow down. But often you can see like their goal difference at 15, always in the negatives. Their towers at 15, always below 1 on average. Their combined kills per minute, often very, very low. This is not a team that has ever really played towards the early game. And instead they just try to mitigate it towards a stronger mid to late game. But this time around, that is different. They are going much more towards the early game. They need to find advantages. Niski needs to get ahead of Blanc. Odoamne needs to be pressuring Profit. We should be seeing dives, ideally towards the top lane or towards mid, but you just need to be making plays. And if we see Splyce playing towards bot like they did last week, then you know something is going wrong in their communication, and they're only setting themselves up for failure.
Yeah, this is what Loa was talking about when she interviewed Peter Dunn about how Splyce, you know, their biggest enemy can be themselves. It's this incorrect focus that sometimes can sink this team. Now, to check in with how things are going, though, we are going to have to keep an eye on Xerxes. He was hanging around that top side, but he doesn't actually go for any plays. He's now on level 6, has access to the subjugate, so he can steal some stats away from Profit. But it does seem like Splyce are hesitant to pull the trigger in the early stages of this game. But keep an eye on how Xerxes passes the next few minutes.
Well, he's going to hand the blue buff over to Niski. And then what I'd love to see is a push in mid and then look for a dive up top. With Memento having no flash, you could also invade enemy jungle as Kabi continues to take more harassment from Hiku, who is playing this laning phase superbly at the moment. But I also have my eyes on Memento. Double pink wards played towards the bot side. You know, we talked a lot about what Splyce need to do in the early game. Note how Hiku and Noskorin do have a lot of pressure towards bot and how much vision they've set up in this bot side river. They want to try and continue this pressure up towards the bottom side of the map. And if they secure that early tower in the bot lane, things could look really positive for Roccat.
It certainly could. Let's see if they want to make a play up towards there. For the time being, it's all about trying to secure some of this vision. There are so many. You've mentioned 2 pink wards. We're talk about 3 now in this river. If anybody from Splyce even blink in that direction, Roccat are going to know about it. But honestly, Roccat just making sure that Splyce can't actually get the jump on them early on in this game, and they're building these lane leads. You see outside of the top, where it's a winning matchup for Odoamne anyways, it's a pretty hefty CS advantage for Blank and Hiku. Xerxes is hanging around up top here, so Profit might have to watch himself, but he is safe under tower. Blank looking to come in, possibly intercept.
This is what we wanted to see. Definitely the proactive early game from Splyce, but Roccat reading it. They're already in position to answer. Niski doesn't have pressure in the mid lane, so that means Blanc can get there first. Kabi and Kasing continuing to take a lot of harassment. But I also want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the items we've got, Pyro, because note how Hiku has picked himself up the serrated Dirk. You may have seen it on this or that. You've probably seen it in a couple of pro games right now that viruses are shifting between whether they go full lethality or the Rage Blade build. And it looks like that Hiku is going for a little bit more of an early game spike. Likely we'll see an early Ghost Blade into something like the Dust Blade of Drakthar. We'll also see picked up.
Hold on a second,
Knight.
Blank.
He's
okay.
fine.
All right. Continue your point.
He's fine. And so you'll just see full lethality, which is great in the early to mid game. But the thing about lethality is it always falls off the more armor that the enemy opposition gets. And it's great against targets with low armor, so that's where you're seeing so much pressure put onto the Ashe right now. But when you kind of look at players like Trundle and the Gnar, things will get tougher to kill them, and you will have less of a late game impact.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think it seems like Roccat are trying to kind of maybe even out a little bit of the spike and the scaling that they're going to have by giving Hiku some earlier power, puts more on Blank in the later stages of the game to make it happen, and maybe it's not going to hit so hard in the late game. But as we've alluded to several times, Roccat are not a team that we should be looking at late game, even though they're going to have a pretty solid team fight.
It's a really weird situation that we're in right now, right? Because Roccat, they're the kind of team that we've said all split long are like, oh, Memento has to find early game leads, and then when Roccat are ahead at 15, they always win their games, and oh, that's the kind of team that they are. But
there's a pattern.
This time they've intentionally not drafted towards that. But also, they're not falling behind. The game is even. There's a slight goal difference, but it's very, very even.
I have a theory, Betty.
Whereas Splyce are after an early game lead. It's 11 minutes in, and Memento, after losing his flash, has received 0 pressure. Blanc has not been put under any kind of pressure whatsoever, aside from that one gank that we've just seen. And Xerxes has not been able to make anything happen. We haven't seen any top lane dives. We haven't seen an Ashe arrow come out cross-map. It's one of those situations where who actually has the better late game when you think Splyce are the better late game team, but Roccat have the better late game comp.
Yeah.
It's a very fascinating dynamic.
I have a theory, Vetis. I think they swapped pick and ban notes.
Maybe.
Accidentally. They left them behind stage. They picked up the wrong one. Nobody noticed until they were on stage already, and they went with it.
Yeah, I mean, like,
that's my working theory.
The funny thing is, if they did swap drafts, then it'd be like, oh, this is very much more Roccat style, and this is a very Splyce style. And it's funny because coming into this game, we were all just like, I want to talk about the differences in style, Pyro. You know, I want to talk about how
you were really
Roccat
excited about
so
it, actually.
early game focused, and how Memento, he's an early game jungler, he's going to be ganking a lot, probably going to be playing around like Prophet and Blank, that's the lanes he usually plays around, and Splyce, they're just going to be more passive scaling. They're going to be more defensive. But it's Roccat who get the first tower.
Yeah,
Roccat.
Despite the fact that it was a Rift Herald picked up by Splyce side, so they're actually behind the 8-ball a little bit here.
All right, there's the arrow, tries to go mid.
All right, gets rooted up. Niski doesn't have the mana to really follow through. That Sand Soldier damage, though, equalizes out. So finally, both teams kind of decide to pull the trigger on making something happen, but it was Roccat that comes up with that early tower, and it means that the gold game is pretty much even.
But I mean, the thing is, right, is that Roccat have continued to have pressure bot, and I think that they were fine just conceding top. Prophet realized that they didn't have enough vision towards top side, didn't know where Niski was, or really Xerxes, so he didn't want to run the risk of getting killed. And they were just willing to trade towers. They knew they would get bot first. You talked about how the gold is dead even right now, and this is the best case scenario for Roccat. We already talked about how Blanc is a guy who has shown a lot of comfort last split on this Azir. If he is able to get through the laning phase as a happy little emperor, right? He's going to come in with his items fully completed. We know he can play well in team fights. We saw his 5-man Shockwave last split. You have so much engage with Prophet and Memento. You have follow-up with Hiku. You have so much peel for your carries with Norscaran as well, and the Azir. Like, I feel like right now, the way the game is planning out, Roccat are happy. But
they have to be.
I'm hesitant.
Until now. Maybe now things are a little less happy.
All right,
a little less happy on the Emperor status, but Hiku's taking a tower up top. This is just objective trades across the map right now. No kills. Still 13 minutes.
Splyce securing a mid lane tower, they'll open up the map a lot more. It will make LeBlanc's ability to find picks that much more potent. And with the Ashe arrow coming out relatively soon, maybe they can use it, but the tower doesn't even go down. Now, Roccat have multiple members. The Ashe is down bot. Trundle's stealing red. If Roccat wanted, they could just push and group up as a 4-man unit towards mid, but instead they're going to concede, and I feel like they lost a little more than they should have in the bot side of the map.
All right, so Splyce will manage to keep this gold in their favor for the time being. It's about 1,000 the difference, but this is only just towers and towers in CS right now, so a little bit of extra gold in the pockets with the changing of objectives, the trading of objectives. But who really comes out ahead in this one? overall, the last 5 or 6 minutes, Vedius, who do you think actually wins here?
You look at the gold, and Splyce have come out ahead because they're 1,000 heads.
True, but given where they were before.
Yeah, I mean, right now, in terms of the actual state of the game. Oh, Niski's very low. Very, very low.
Yeah, that was the wrong Niski.
But, I mean, Roccat are fine. You know, we talked a lot about it. They are scaling. First items being completed across the board. Iceborne for Profit. You've got the Nash's Tooth done now for Blanc. Cinderhulk already finished up for Memento. They're good. They're happy. They want to wait until about 20-25 minutes once that second item's done. And then they can just go, well, let's team fight. And the problem is, Splyce don't have a strong enough early game lead that they can really draw multiple members from Roccat to a side lane. You can just have Blanc quickly wave clear bot and then move up with the rest of his team. And he doesn't have to worry about being killed by this LeBlanc because, well, he's not that strong. He's not that scary. So yeah. I feel like that Splyce so far haven't been able to utilize the early strength of their composition. We're now approaching 15 minutes and there are 0 kills. And while they are in a gold lead, it doesn't feel like that their composition is going to be primed and ready to utilize the strengths it does have.
Yeah, I think the reliance here, if this game continues the way it is going to be on Splyce executing that split push in a way that confounds Roccat, because we've seen it happen. We've seen that recipe for success.
Yes, we have.
When other teams can execute a good split push that pulls Roccat apart when they want to get the split push going. Of course, as we have Paz on stage, the fans are entertaining us all with a few cheers of their own invention.
They love you, Pyro.
Apparently. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys and girls.
Animated fans today.
They really are. They really are, Vedius. I'm sure they're fans of you as well.
Well, last time they sung at Vedius Sucks song.
Well, if they're not fans of you, then tell you what, I'll be a fan of you and your predictions. See?
I'm all right. I'll take all right. All right's not bad.
That's pretty good. Superior analyst, all right caster. Yeah, sure, you know.
Wait till Betsy gets on stage.
Oh, it's going to be nuts. Spoiler alert, by the way. You guys should definitely watch that game. The fans are having a great time.
It's going to be fascinating. The Betsy fans versus the Reckless fans. Who's going to be allowed?
Ooh. Okay. By the way, to update everybody on what's going on, we have a report of ping spikes happening in the game as well. So League officials are investigating that as we're still paused in this one. But yeah,
my ping went from 7 to 9. What do I do?
No, they're still playing the 60 ping. It's remember Rift Rivals.
No, but obviously it is an issue. They're going to try and get it resolved as quickly as possible once they figure out the source of it. But yeah, so far nothing has happened in this game.
I mean, well, there's a few. Okay, no kills, 2 towers. There was Splyce taking not only the Rift Herald, but they also took a Cloud Dragon. That's pretty much the difference. I just summed up the first 14 minutes.
But unless someone dies, nothing happens, Pyro.
I mean, that's kind of like what my heart tells me. Remember, I came from the LPL back in 2014.
That's true.
That never quite left me, to be honest.
And the thing is, right, we talked a lot about how this game is very, very important, not only in terms of the standings, but being able to qualify for playoffs and like moving forward throughout the rest of the split. And so you'd imagine that both teams are a little on edge. They don't want to be the ones to take that big gamble. They don't want to make that move that could cost their team the game. And so the fact that Roccat have drafted more towards scaling and Splyce have put this emphasis on themselves to be the proactive team, you gotta wonder how the pressure is weighing on them. You know, they did lose to H2K only last week. That did give Roccat the opportunity to close the gap in the standings. And now with Roccat securing that mid tower, things continue to go in their favor, even though they are at a slight gold deficit.
Yeah, they're going to be fairly happy, though, with the way that this early game has played out. Still hanging on to that mid tower just barely as Splyce is pinging it. And talk about the H2K loss, man. That is also a momentum killer. Roccat losing 0-2 and kind of breaking that 1-1 consistent streak that they'd had every week doesn't feel so good. But yeah, I wonder who really came out of last week a little bit worse, because we were talking it up. Nobody wants to be that team that's losing to H2K. You got to start asking yourself a lot of questions, and this is where you get to that point that Peter Dunn said about how Splyce can be their own worst enemy.
Yep, they certainly can. So looking at the current state of the game, there's no Dragon to play around. Baron is still a little too early. Items seem to be working towards their second. Niski hasn't actually completed his first one as of right now.
He goes for the Sork shoes early.
He is sitting on about 1250 gold, so he should have more than enough to go back and purchase it. But yeah, I mean, like, I feel like I'm a broken record right now. We're just seeing we're seeing Roccat play exactly the way they want to. They're not forcing any other game plays. They're getting to their second item. So things pretty chill. Here's the arrow.
There we go. Instantly, though, Norscarin eats it, absorbs it. Niski misses everything on the combo, does get poked back.
He took more damage.
Yeah, that's a little unfortunate as a LeBlanc. But I do have some news for you, so you don't have to be that broken record, Vedius. This is looking like we're going to be in for the latest first blood of the split.
Here we
go. You know who owns that record, too?
Who owns it?
Splyce.
Of course
from
they
last
do.
week. So this is
What is the
consistent.
number, Pyra? Do you know?
I believe, I'm going to go ahead and get it from stats in my ear one more time, but I'm pretty sure we're past. It was 16 minutes and I want to say 4 seconds or 14 seconds.
Okay, so we are guaranteed to set a new record.
3 seconds. I was off by 1, as is my always is my math. We have ourselves a new record, and of course it's Splyce trying to set it, but they needed to make things happen early on. And I feel like it really hasn't been enough here.
No, it has not.
That's my analytical opinion, by the way.
Anyone in solo queue that has ever been a 0-0-0 LeBlanc by 17 minutes never goes, yeah, I'm happy with this. She is so much about lane dominance, finding picks, and now look, Blanc coming in for a flank.
Okay, let's see if he can make this one happen. Goes over, gets the 2-man shuffle up, and I don't care if you swallow the ash, you're going down, my friend. That is going to be 1 kill, first blood, swag in style. Kabi is going nowhere, and Blank picks up 1 with Hiku on the other. It's inner tower time.
Latest first blood of the split secured by Roccat as they find 2 kills onto Splyce and secure themselves a tier 2 tower in the mid.
Well, things are starting to get real interesting right now, so Roccat take the incentive, and this is the team fighting. Let's take a look at that one more time. Nice flank for Blank.
Blanc using the vision that Roccat had set up in the bot side of the map to get behind Corbett and Kasing. Kasing does his best to keep the AD carry alive, but the kind of blind throwaway ultimate from Memento to lock down Corbett, securing another kill for the team, means that Roccat find 2 kills and now have swung the gold in their favor.
Oh, that was absolutely beautiful execution there from the Roccat side. And this is what we like to see from the Roccat team. When they pick this composition, when they pick for some team fights, even if it's maybe not so late in the game, they can really execute this well when they're on the same page. And that's why it was so heartbreaking to see them just fall down, just fall short twice last week.
It certainly was. The question is, can they continue with the lead that they currently have? This is a team that has come back before. They found these late game leads, but then they often make that one poor decision that throws the game away. This is why we heard Deficio on Ready Check say, do not go into the late game, because they haven't shown a consistency in that aspect. Something that Splyce often do. Let's not forget last split how many times it went to 45, 50 minutes. They were defending their Nexus, and then they found that miracle fight and were able to turn the game around. This is a team that's kind of been conditioned in the late game, and it's an environment with which they thrive. So even though they're at a goal deficit, you can never really count this experienced squad out.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Like, a lot of the don't go to late game for Roccat is a lot more on how good Splyce are at executing at that point. So we won't rule them out anytime soon. But for the time being, Roccat are looking very good. Now, Blank does find Odawane zoning him out a little bit. He's split pushing himself right now. A lot of vision, though, is allowing Roccat to get away with this.
Looking again at some of the items and the vision that you talked about. So many control wards set up towards the bot side. Pretty unconventional to see the Azir pushed up in a side lane so far on a, when he's not conventionally used as a split push champion, but it's because of how much vision they have. They know they have priority over the mid lane, but they still want to keep him relatively close. Ocean Drake spawns in about 40 seconds, and so by keeping this wave pushed up and keeping priority over mid and all of this deep vision down towards the bottom side of Splyce's jungle, it means that they have an easy avenue to not only play towards the Drake, but even this tier 2 in the bot lane.
This is time. Hiku senses it is going to be the time to fight. Ghostblade, Dustblade of Drakthar also on, and it looks like this tower only needs a few more chip shots. Nick goes down. Do Roccat feel like they want to take this fight to get some damage? And Kasing hops Odawane into his mount. Teleport coming through. Xerxes a little bit late to the party. Missed the memo. It would appear. Horn's happening. Xerxes goes golden, but I think they're going to leave him out to dry here. And Hiku's taking him down. Roccat knocking on the doors.
Roccat are playing so clean right now. They find themselves another tower. They find themselves another kill. And Niski, he's trying to do what he can on a side lane, but he just doesn't have the wave clear. He doesn't have the tower threat that a 5-man grouped Roccat do as they make their way towards the Ocean Drake.
Roccat are enforcing their will in this game right now, not allowing Splyce to play the comfortable style. So gold leads in their favor, tower leads in their favor, everything. And here is what helps seal the deal.
Remember, if you want to play split push with Splyce, you need to be drawing multiple members towards your side lane. This is not what you want. Having all 5 group up in the bot lane, forcing an engage onto the weaker 5v5 squad that is Splyce, and Roccat are just getting everything that they want. They get onto the targets they need to. They forced Odo out of the fight very early on. They're able to take down Trundle thanks to their chain CC and the huge amount of engage tools that they have. And now Azir, he's completed his second item. He's going to be dealing a lot of damage. That LeBlanc will not one-shot him because he's just finished that Banshee's Veil. Roccat are looking so good with a very solid gold lead 21 minutes into the game. It's going to be challenging for Splyce to come back.
Happy little Emperor. Roccat are going to be in the driver's seat for the foreseeable future unless Splyce can make something happen, and they seem a little uncertain here. This is what Freddie was talking about. It's all about getting that execution, getting last week out of your heads. It seems like this is a completely different team right now.
This is the Roccat potential that they talked so much about. This is what they saw in themselves that many others did not. 6 and 8 in the standings. The do-or-die game that they had to win. We've talked a lot last week about miracle runs. Roccat could look to do the same. After a 0-2 week last week, a win here would be monumental, and now they're looking for a collapse onto Memento.
Memento, he does dash forward, looks for the Kasing. Oh, Memento's getting low right now, and Hikyu realizes he can't put out enough damage in time. The Ashar comes through, Hikyu flashes away. So Splyce pick up 1 kill, the rest of Roccat are out.
And this is a good punish from Splyce. They noticed that Roccat got a little too overzealous, sending only 2 members of Roccat into Splyce's topside jungle when Roccat didn't quite have the support in order to help that squad get out. Odo used his teleport to set up a nice flank, and they found some easy kills. And you can just hear, look at the minimap right now. They did have mid priority, but the problem is that Varus is near his tower. He's not really able to assist. Norscarin goes over the wall because of the blast cone. Azir is in the top lane, and you just don't have the proper support to kind of disengage that situation. So Memento and Norscarin just getting a little too deep, and Splyce utilizing their TP to get a good punish.
Yeah, it allows them to secure a little bit more vision around this Baron pit as well, which will be one of the next objectives both teams will keep an eye on, but it does mean that Roccat still, despite over-pushing, don't lose too much for the time being, and they can still get as much clear as they want on. They just don't have Scuttle Vision for now.
Oof, that third lethality item coming in for Hikyu means that he is going to be doing a lot of damage, but you can already see some of the early armor rushes from Xerxes picking up that
Gargoyle Stoneplate.
Stoneplate, yes.
Yeah, he's going very tanky as a Trundle as
well. Look at all the Merc Treads you can see as well. Very little armor built elsewhere means that Hikyu will continue to do a lot of damage as it all comes down.
Okay, and they're going to knock him up. Sing is going to go ahead and pop that stopwatch, but now the fight's in here. Odoamne's find the flank, and Blank is trying to come in. I don't think Roccat are quite on the same page, but Memento takes down Odoamne before it even starts. Memento is also going to fall. Kabe getting the kill, and Splyce bleeding and bruised, but they still want to take this fight right now. Stun off onto Blank. Norscarin moving through, and the shuffle goes back. Hop back into the belly of Kasing, and they're still going. This is an all-out brawl, and Xerxes is going to find Blank and Kabe, firing arrows as many ways as he can. Prophet not able to find the kill, and Splyce are going to make out like bandits. Prophet falling, double kill to Xerxes. Splyce with the victory on that fight.
Huge turnaround team fight for Splyce as they find a successful 5v5 against Roccat. They do not want to risk going for the Baron right now. A teleport was just used, and now they have a teleport of their own. They're going to start it.
Okay, all they needed to know was that Roccat spent the teleport and then ended up canceling away, so Splyce unopposed on Baron Nashor right now. A massive fight is going to result in a massive objective for this team, and wouldn't you know it, Vedius, we are right back into it after one of those critical mistakes from Roccat.
Oh, big mistake from Roccat. Got to see the replay on how that all came to be. No steal going to come out from Hikyu. Splyce secured themselves to Baron. They're now back in control of the game.
All right, this next replay brought to you by Acer Predator. Let's take a look at that fight again.
So 2 ultis used onto Kasing is the first thing. Odo gets onto the back line, and look at how much damage he does to Hikyu by himself. That lethality poke Varus is pretty much out of the fight along with Odoamne, and Memento drops almost instantly. Now it's a 4 versus 3. And then the decision here from Blanc is the crucial one. He commits so hard on trying to kill Kabe that he throws himself into all 4 members. And with him dead, all of the damage is now gone. So a couple of crucial plays from the side of Splyce. Odoamne getting onto the backline, Kasing providing fantastic peel with the Tahm Kench, along with Blanc diving onto the backline when he didn't have proper support. A wise Splyce were able to find a good fight there and walk away as the victors.
All right, yeah, that was a crazy one. And that Acer Predator replay at the very end, Kabe getting away, that really meant the difference between Splyce being able to pick up the Baron. So now the question becomes, what can they get off this one? Because all of a sudden, you're back to 1-3-1.
Yeah, and now it becomes a lot harder for Roccat to just group up and fight because you're going to have so much pressure in these side lanes. Threatening the tower is so much more effective as the LeBlanc when you have those Baron-empowered minions as well. This is where Splyce can really get a lot of gold on back in their pockets. Notice the tower difference is 5-2 in favor of Roccat, yet Splyce currently sit with the gold lead. And now they're going to divide this Roccat squad up. Odoamne level 16. Prophet's not going to be able to hold him off in a side lane. Splyce in a fantastic position right now.
Yeah, all off the back of that fight. It turns things around, and this is how it goes sometimes. You think you're in the driver's seat, and if you take an ill-advised fighter, you get yourself caught out of position. A team like Splyce, they can collapse. So it was a disastrous start. But let's see if Splyce can keep this one going right now. 4 towers to 5. You can see Niski unopposed in the top lane on the split push, and his LeBlanc may not have completely popped off early, but he's starting to look like he might be able to delete people. He's got some stacks on the Dark Seal. He's got 2 items, including the Luden's Echo. And now Splyce is looking towards mid lane for the rest.
So unfortunate for Roccat. We talked about how their mid to late game decision making is often what lets them down, and the fight itself, you know, to engage onto a Tahm Kench, not the way you want to start these fights. You know, fighting around the Baron at that point in the game as well, you know, rather questionable. And this is why we kind of said you don't often want to play around those late game win conditions, because it's not a way in which Roccat have been able to succeed. And while things looked good in the early, everything looked great for them. They make that one crucial mistake, and now Splyce are back in control. Now, it is rather challenging against Azir to comfortably siege up against these towers. He does have a lot of poke and wave clear, but Splyce doing what they can to slowly chip away at this tower.
Looking for some Roccat redemption here, trying to come back into the gold game. Still, only a couple thousand behind as we tick over into the 28-minute mark, but Splyce, full tempo control, Baron buff, still 25 seconds left for them to make use of it. Not a whole lot else to push, but they've secured most of the inner towers. It's just this one up in top that Niski's been unable to crack. It does seem like Splyce is more interested in moving towards the mid, though. Kabi's starting to put out some serious damage on the Sash, too.
Yeah, you can see Roccat split across the map. This is the ideal situation for Splyce as they just chip away onto all the towers. Odoamne being one of the most lethal ones, given he is that level 16, Blade of the Ruin King and Black Cleaver. Very much a split push build. And it enables Splyce to just position around the dragon as well. But now the Baron buff has worn off. Splyce got a lot off the back of that. 2,000 gold lead in their favor right now. And things kind of reset. We gotta remind ourselves of the win conditions for both teams. Roccat, very much about 5v5 team fighting. Trying to force those situations where they can get an engage ideally onto Niski or Kobe, or maybe even Odo before he goes into Mega Gnar.
That's the key. They need to be the ones forcing the fights.
Yes.
When they lost it, it was because they weren't ready to take it.
It's about forcing the fights onto the right target.
Absolutely.
Forcing a fight onto a
not the Tahm
thing
Kench.
is not the way you want to start those fights off, right? Whereas for Splyce, they want to keep the map divided. The situation that you just saw, that 1-3-1, where Roccat was forced to divide, that is the ideal setup where Splyce can go for these more skirmishes, 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s, and try and utilize all the teleports that they do have at their disposal to quickly find these picks, the Ash Arrow as well. But now that Roccat are able to regroup, let's see how Splyce respond. They do not want to get caught off as a 3-man in the middle lane.
Yep, teleport's starting to come back up off cooldown. We're only waiting on Niski's before, and Kabi's before it's all kind of over. You see that Baron power play for Splyce, of course. Not too shabby for them, and picking up a couple of towers as well is certainly going to help out. But I want to draw your attention once again to the build of HQ, because he is going all in on this lethality. So you mentioned it earlier, how this is not going to be as useful in the later stages of the game. What's the shelf life on that build?
Well, I mean, it's fine until the enemy builds armor, and I don't see any armor. Kasing has a decent amount of armor. Xerxes has also picked himself up the Stoneplate, as we talked about earlier. Oh, and he's also got the Knight's Fan now. So those two targets, the lethality build, not very effective against. Kobe, Niski, Odoamne, you land your Q. That hurts. That is literally taking an arrow to the knee and not being able to walk for a week.
Okay. That's a little rough. Both these teams got to play tomorrow as well, so Splyce better get good at dodging.
That's certainly the case. Or just build some armor. Get some plating on those knees. Working towards that 4th item as you identified. Baron going to be spawning in about 1 minute 10 seconds, and this will be one of the big ones, because the way in which both teams look to play around the Baron will be crucial. If you're a team fighting team, what you often like to do is start the Baron, force the split pusher to TP in, and then you reset. Because you just want to go back, make sure that everything on the map is back the way you like it. You have the enemy team then come in and force them into a 5v5 situation, rather than allowing Odoamne to just freely hit onto the tower in the side lane. Whereas Splyce, all you want to do is stall the Baron for as long as possible, or ideally be in a position where you're in a way that you can threaten the Baron but also have pressure on the side lanes. So making sure that you have mid priority and then can move your vision into the river will be crucial. And right now it looks like Splyce are the initial ones to get there. In terms of the control wards, there's plenty of either side. And now Roccat, you can see, look, moving up towards the mid lane. They want to try and push this back out so they can move into the river, and then they can be the ones to set up around this back.
Getting a little itchy to try and pull the trigger and make a fight here. It's difficult. You've got the 1-3-1 still going for Splyce. The Sun Disc does get thrown down, and Roccat trying to make a stand and push in to try and secure up some of that Baron vision. It is about to spawn. Nisqy coming through river. And he's not going to be going that direction anymore as he sees the rest of Roccat bringing up the flank. Roccat are making moves for this pretty quickly. They're going to start it off.
Now you start it. Now you try and force the teleport out from Odoamne. Prophet is grouped with the team. Keep your eyes on Odo. Where is the teleport coming in?
All right, not quite yet. He's actually calling the bluff of Roccat. Odoamne does not teleport. Now he's going to go ahead and do it. Roccat immediately peeling off the Baron. Cancel teleport from Odo.
And now you reset if you're Roccat. You got what you wanted. Odoamne has used that global objective, and now Prophet can go back and kind of deal with the pressure that he's throwing out. Splyce are at a risk of losing a couple of these towers, but they've been able to reposition fast enough, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly how you do it against these 1-3-1s. Start the Baron, force the teleport to come out, and then you reset. You don't commit, you don't need to go for the 5v5 because you've taken all this damage from the Baron. A lot of your abilities could be on cooldown as well. So you just disengage, you reset, and now you'll see how Roccat once again grouping up as 5, and they're going to look to try and force a fight again. This time though, Odo can't TP in, and they'll be more inclined to go for the full-on 5v5 fight.
So it's going to force Splyce to dance to the tune of Roccat. Sitting in the middle, Norscarin hunting around the side, sniffing for something. You can hear the Ghost Blade popped. EQ wanting to try and find that arrow damage. Odoamne nearly filled up on the Narbar, though. If there is ever a time that Splyce can fight, that would be it.
Yeah, so Roccat waiting for the Narbar to run out, and then I'd love to see them try and force an engagement. Splyce are in this tricky predicament where ideally they want to have Nisqy off on a side lane, but him TPing in for a flank is not the best way to utilize a LeBlanc. He wants to kind of chip someone out, but it's so hard because you have a Banshee's Veil on top of Blanc, you have the peel from Norscarin, and you also have the Edge of Night on Hiku that adds that extra bit of magic resistance. So Nisqy doesn't even have a good target to kind of chunk out before the fight even happens. So now Roccat have priority over mid, they have the mid-wave control, and now they start the Baron. Let's see if they can get this fight that they so desperately want.
Instantly peeling off, Cersei coming through, throws the pillar down. That's going to be it, though. So Roccat, a little bit squeamish here. They don't want to go all in unless they can find themselves a pick, and it's Odoamne who hops away. Still taking damage from the Sand Soldiers, but Narbar nearly back up and available. Splyce still stacking in the middle. There's a minion wave pushing in bottom. Roccat have not responded to it just yet. It looks like they will send Hiku down there eventually.
Yeah, they're going to send Hiku because they don't mind him using his teleport a little bit earlier into the fight. Ideally, they want to have Prophet's TP up because Hodo's is going to be ready relatively soon, and they want to have that available so that the two top laners can match. Here we go. Here we go, Nisqy. Landing good damage.
That's a lot of damage. Not as much of the chunk as he was hoping to get, but still, that is not chump change either. Here comes Odo with the massive Gnar! Right into the edge of terrain, and Hiku comes up, bringing up the rear a little bit too late, and it looks like Splyce is going to be able to start this fight off right. Cersei takes down Memento. It's a 5v4, and Roccat are bleeding out here. Blank unable to get back into the fight, and all they can do is try and push back the remaining members of Splyce. They win that one huge. They didn't even need any further kills because Roccat can't contest Baron.
This is the second fight in a row where Odoamne has been instrumental in securing the win for Splyce. They now have 5 members on the Baron. 2 TPs are available for Roccat, but it looks like they're just going to concede it.
No smite, and that means no contest. Splyce will pick up Baron number 2. 35 minutes into this game. Prophet sniffing forward, just wanting to see if this is happening. It looks like he might even give his life over at this point. Roccat realized they have to take a not-so-smart fight. Nisqy looking to sniff around the side, and once again, the execution errors plaguing Roccat.
Splyce walk away with a bonus kill. They walk away with the Baron. The gold lead's going to build even more. Let's look at Odoamne once again. This guy on the split push Gnar build starts off with Nisqy getting a good chunk onto Norscarin. Definitely a great way to start the fight. But he goes in 4-man Gnar ultimate into a 4-man stun. The Kobe ultimate follows up. The Norscarin ultimate whiffs. And then you have Kobe dealing free damage along with Nisqy on the back line. The Zeus they can just shred through Memento after stealing away all of his stats, making him a very squishy tank. And Splyce just play that fight so beautifully. God, Odo That's the second time now we've seen him have this fantastic ultimate, and he has been the core reason that Splyce has been able to win so many of these fights.
And Roccat are supposed to have the team fighting composition, Vedia, so you called it way early on in this game about Splyce. They are going for the split push, but when it comes to late game execution, they have the edge yet again. Not only Baron buff, but the Elder Dragon in tow.
Oof, they have everything. 2 Cloud Drakes sit under their belt, so they will deal a lot of extra damage with the burn. And now you can see how they're dividing up the map. Niski, he needs to go pick up his blue buff. Classic selfish mid laner, but there's still plenty of time left on the Baron and the Elder. Their main goal now is to get themselves an inhibitor. With that gone, breaking the rest of Rockat's base becomes easier, but also forces Splyce to crumple up. Could Roccat finally find the fight that they've been looking for? Because outside of the first 22 minutes of the game, Roccat have not been able to find anything go their way.
And it seems like they just haven't been in the right position to react to it. You saw in that last fight that Hiku just wasn't even there until the fight was almost already over. Odoamne splitting, Narbar nearly full, Niski hanging around the side. That's going to be the Unbreakable, already used. Niski sniffing in and finds the Banshee's Veil. But nonetheless, Splyce pushing up here for what is looking to be a very critical moment for them, as they've already managed to really execute well in the later stages of this game. Splyce, 10,000 gold to lead and looking to try and secure up their playoff chances.
And the pressure is really mounting for Roccat. Remember that this game is so important for them to try and secure a spot in the playoffs. You can see 6-8 for Roccat, 7-7 in Splyce. But the reason why this game is so important is because Splyce already are 1-0 over Roccat. Another win would give Splyce the head-to-head record, and given how close these two teams are in the standings, even if Roccat miraculously win all their games and then Splyce lose it, if they're tied score at the end of the season, Splyce come out on top. That's why this game is so important. And given the situation they're in, Roccat are going to have to find a miracle play to turn this game around.
As it stands, they're already just losing out on these objectives here. Inhibitor falling in the bottom. It seems like the game plan, all according to it. Odoamne sitting inside the base in Meganar Foreman. Roccat unable to really do anything, but watch as these are slowly chunked down. Kabi starting to put out insane damage. You see the Infinity Edge, of course, for him, as well as the Lord Dominix. And even Odoamne is pestering Roccat inside of their own base, and no recourse here.
The Baron buff is about to wear off. Elder Drake short to follow, but they will secure themselves another tower.
Maybe an
Splyce
inhibitor.
Continuing with their pressure.
All right, Odoamne pushing forward. Chain's not going to land. That is a tilter for sure, if the rest of this game hasn't already gone that way. And Splyce going straight on forward. Norscarin does delete Niski off the map, and maybe this is the chance for Roccat to finally find that fight, unless they can beat feet out of here. Norscarin, Memento stepping forward, Kabi low, but he's surrounded by teammates, and there's not a whole lot of AoE coming through. Roccat, they needed more than that. Look at the side lanes, Vedius.
Splyce still secure themselves 2 inhibitors. Yes, Roccat found a good kill onto Niski. He overstayed his welcome, he took a little too much damage, but the damage has been done. Splyce now sitting at a 10,000 gold lead. They're winning out a lot on these fights just because of the way in which they're out-executing Roccat. Let's see how quick... so Niski takes a chunk of damage, he then jumps into range of a double ulti CC from Memento and Norscarin, and it gives away his life. So a bit of a misplay there from the mid laner of Splyce. And Roccat kind of saw an opportunity to maybe re-engage, maybe find a 5v5, but the engage tools had gone and Roccat had nothing left to follow.
I don't know what you're talking about, Vedius. I think he pulled off a great magic trick. He made himself disappear.
That's very true. No one could definitely figure that one out. 1-1-5 so far this game. Has decided to sell his Dark Seal, working towards the death cap, but
it's about time.
At this point, I mean,
he hasn't needed to have a massive impact because it seems like Splyce has done what they needed to do the back half of this game.
I feel like some of the, in that crucial fight that they did win, getting that big chunk onto Norscarin definitely helped, and we just kind of wanted to see more of it. But again, you know, Splyce doing what Splyce always do, late game. And, you know, even, again, this composition is not bad in the late game. It's just that it only thrives when you're in the 1v1, 2v2 kind of...
Or if Odoamne gets a 4-man Gnar, but you know, you can't count on that every time, I suppose.
A 4-man Gnar, yes, that's very true. Whereas for Roccat, yeah, in the 5v5 scenario, they do have that great late game, but if you can't execute upon it, then it's not going to work out for you, even if you do have the scaling on your side. And so far, Splyce have not been enabling them to do that. They're nicely dividing Roccat up. You can see that Niski and the 3-man squad in mid are just pushing the super minion waves in, gonna make it easier for the rest of Splyce to threaten that top tower and that final inhibitor. But I feel like we're on track for getting a 3rd Baron this game. Splyce definitely going to play it calm, cool, and collected for now.
No need to make the mistake. Keeping in mind those stakes, Splyce, well, they all but lock up playoffs. Not 100% guaranteed for them. Of course, there are a couple of other teams in the LCS that will be cheering for their victory today because Splyce win this game and Misfits and Fnatic secure playoffs for sure.
That's very true. Misfits and Fnatic could look to lock in a playoff spot, yet the seeding is yet to be decided, and those games will be crucial throughout the next 2 weeks. As you can see, Misfits will be going up against H2K next with their sub Jezzes on the starting roster. So we'll see how that pans out for them later on. For now, Roccat still on base defense duty. Baron going to be spawning in about 30 seconds. They have no vision in that area, so likely they will have to phase check. And so far, we've already seen how quickly Memento melts when Xerxes ults him into the rest of the team, just killing him. So phase checking probably not the ideal scenario that Roccat want to find themselves.
Yeah, very fair. Now, for Splyce, it does seem like Baron, 3rd time will be the charm for them. Be able to secure this up 8 seconds, and they're in a prime position to do it. But Ottawamne waiting in the wings as well. Niski on the bottom lane has his teleport up and available. Splyce holding all the cards in this. And if Roccat do come back into this game, it has got to be one of the most impressive comebacks. But it's so hard to see them doing it at this point. 42 minutes in, well into Splyce's territory. 2-man on the Baron.
Oh my word.
Yeah, that's a lot of Ashe damage. Rapid fire.
Yeah, they're melting through it. Roccat can't even get close, and it's secured.
No, that's it. Easy peasy. I don't know about this fight, though. Let's see if they can get Ottawamne down and get swallowed up by Kasing. Denied. And meanwhile, in the base, Niski is dueling up against Prophet. Pushing that wave in. That was not a great duel. That was more of a, hello, how are you?
He just wanted to keep the pressure up. Prophet was forced to answer. Splyce secure themselves the 3rd Baron of the game. Gold's still about 10,000 in their favor, and they can go back to the 1-3-1. They don't need to wait for the Elder Drake. Ottawamne going to preemptively teleport in. Maybe a little too early because the rest of his team is not quite there to help join, but I don't think he wants to give up this minion wave just yet, as Blanc is here to answer.
Okay, Inhibitor does come back up. That slight bit of relief for Roccat, so the bottom lane Inhib will no longer mean that super minions can be pushing down to the bot side for Splyce. In the mid, still continues for now. Niski keen to change that, however, as he keeps on this split push duty. And Splyce is just taking everything away from Roccat. At this point, Kabi's 2-shotting red buff and everything.
Yes, yes, yes. It's only a matter of time now, Pyra. Roccat, they need to find some miracle of a play. Can they do it?
That is the question. I don't know what kind of voice that was, but I
don't know.
You should do that more often. Niski going in, and Prophet's out. A little bit of damage just tickles him. Doesn't matter, though. The threat's real.
I figured out what voice it is.
What is it?
Here we go. Engage coming in the mid lane.
Horn coming through. Kasing already swallowed up Kabi, and now Memento does finally land that prison on, but I don't know if that is going to be the target he wanted right now. Memento already starting to get shredded through. Even Niski bringing up the rear, and Roccat, they were going 5v4, and they were still losing this fight. Splyce are the stronger team, and they flex their muscles once again.
Ooh, Splyce, they've been able to avoid death once again. They still have a lot of their ultimates available. Especially Ottawamne. He did lose a lot of his health. Ooh, very close to getting
away
picked
from
out.
those arrows.
The Meganar is on the way. For now, the Roccat keeping their inhibitors alive. Splyce going towards the Elder Drake. They're going to continue to play it safe, continue to play it defensively. Roccat, do they face check?
Oh, they do. There's the pillar coming up, and Kasing just sends out the tongue lash. Roccat still trying to sniff around for a fight. Got to be careful, though. Your base is already in shambles. Now Splyce on to the Elder Dragon, looking to start securing up vision easily first, and the Honey Fruit will keep them healed. And it's at this point of the game where it's all Kabi. Let's see if Memento can pull off a miracle.
Late game 80 carries it back, baby.
Wow, this is very late game. Okay, Elder's going to reset.
They actually have priority on this.
But look at Niski.
Are they going to rush it down? Here we go. This is it.
Oh, my
Roccat,
goodness.
Their dream of a comeback is right here, right now.
They need this one. Here we go. Niski trying to come in here, and it looks like this is not quite enough damage to take this down. It's going to be coming down to a smite fight, and it's secured by Memento. But can they win the fight? Ottawamne gets a Gnar over the wall, and it goes Niski to shut down Hikyu and Norscarin. That fight is lost. That game is lost. Splyce when it counts.
Splyce obliterate Roccat 5-0. They have the Baron buff. They have the Nexus set in their eyes, and Splyce are on their way to playoffs.
One fell swoop Looked like you got yourself the dragon, but you lose yourself the game. Splyce pull a most critical win in the race for playoffs.
Things looked dicey in the early game, Pirate.
They did. They
didn't find those early kills. The 1-3-1 wasn't looking good. They were getting engaged on. Then a couple bad decisions from Roccat mean that Splyce found some excellent team fights. Odoamne in particular came up huge on the Gnar.
It wasn't just him, though. I talked about how in the very early game, Niski did not get a whole lot of crazy kills, the flashy lane dominance that we expect, but you just got to look at that last fight. He comes around the side, and poof, there goes Roccat.
Definitely offered value in the late game, but it was all for me about Odoamne and Kaseng as well. The amount of consume that he was throwing out in the clutch moments, keeping those pivotal members alive when they needed to be saved. Absolutely monumental. And while this is devastating for Roccat, this was the game that they needed to win. Unfortunately, they weren't able to pull it off. And Splyce now setting themselves up nicely to secure a playoff spot. Nothing locked in just yet, aside from the fact that Misfits and Fnatic will be making their way to playoffs.
I think those two teams just became Splyce fans. For the time being, Splyce, they can hold their heads high, absolutely. After losing a little bit of momentum, after stumbling a little bit in the loss against H2K, they're all smiles right now. And they deserve it. That was a well-played game, especially the back half. I still got a lot of questions about this team's early game, but
just very slow.
If they can win, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yeah, at the end of the day, a win is a win. They are just a very slow, patient, methodical team. They don't like to take risks. They like to play things a little bit more on the defensive side, and that's what they did. Every single member died only once, and they secured 3 Barons in that game. Their late game stats are probably going to look pretty good.
A couple of Elder Drakes, don't forget about that.
Yeah.
Well, they had almost every objective.
The other one got stolen.
Oh, that's right. They got one Elder Drake, and then they got the Ace afterwards for that one, so that was the game.
But it's great for Splyce, because now they put themselves in a much more comfortable position. I believe there is still a possibility for them to kind of challenge seeding positions. There's still a lot left to be determined, and nothing is actually locked yet, aside from the fact that H2K can't qualify, and Misfits and Fnatic have qualified.
Yeah, so there's still a whole lot of playoff spots up along the lines, but they have a very important question we have to answer. After all that action, who is your player of the game? Is it Odoamne? Is it Niski? Maybe it's Kaseng. I don't know. You guys tell me. Head over to LoL Esports on Twitter and give us your votes. I mean, you pretty much called out each of them as having like a significantly huge impact. So I think those are all good choices.
For me, I have to believe that Odoamne was the key player in that. The fact that there were so many instances where Roccat were the ones to set it for a team fight, but Odoamne with some clutch ultimates really turned the fight in their favor. It is kind of the player that enabled this big win for Splyce.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, for more on Splyce's win, let's check in with Law and their support.
Thank you, Pyra. Splyce opening the week with a win here and getting one step closer to playoffs. Now, Kaseng, what does it mean to you to take down Roccat today?
I mean, it's obviously really good because this kind of not secures it completely of going to playoffs, but it gives us like a really high chance to stay in the playoffs, which is obviously what we want to go for. Even though this game was like quite long, it was 45 minutes, it's some stuff that we're working on, and it kind of shows that, we kind of are really patient and we're able to pick up the win in the end, which is really good for us. So pretty happy about it.
Quite long and quite scary in the beginning because you had a shaky early game. You bounced back right from it during the mid game around the Baron pit. So talk me through the communication there. Who took the calls?
Actually, well, this game I was Tom Kench, so it's a bit hard for me to, tell people what to do. But I think Odo kind of carried this game. Like, he always, spoke about when he's roaming and stuff, what he can do, what we should do. And I think Odo kind of earned MVP in my heart, of course.
Oh. Do you feel like the communication between you guys is well right now? Is it well-rounded?
I think compared to last week, when we done really well against UOL, and then we lost H2K, which was a bit bad. But no, I think this week went really well in terms of like practice. Like, we knew what we had to work on, our weaknesses, and yeah, it just showed in this game.
Yeah, and moving on now, I took some time to talk to Duke before the game, and he told me that the biggest enemy for Splyce right now is yourself. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we're able to get a lead that we should be able to win off, but we just kind of overestimate the enemy or underestimate the enemy, and then after we kind of just throw the game there. And I just feel like sometimes we just have to stick to the basics and kind of like, know when to go in or when to pull the trigger when it's possible. And that kind of, we have to be able to overcome this, and then eventually we'll be a better team.
And that's something you'll have to remember for tomorrow as you will be facing Fnatic. Now, thank you for joining me today. And more on this game, let's head it over to Shox for post-game.
A nice wave there from Kasing. Thank you very much, Law. Nice interview, and I think he's right. Not their own enemy. They had to pull the trigger at the right times, and I think that's also what defined their later game in this one specifically. I do want to start with picks and bans. I want to know from you guys what you think the idea was between both compositions, and then afterwards we're going to compare this to what you had as the win conditions for each team.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if
you look at Splyce, it is very clearly trying to split up the map, look for a 1-3-1 with Odwamne and Niski in a side lane, and try to play a slower game where you try to pressure a lot of turrets. Whereas Roccat, they went full team fight and tried to scale into the later game.
Yeah, and I think one advantage Roccat got in the draft was around the bottom lane. So they first picked the Varus pick, and I think the Tahm Kench is an answer to avoid the Varus Tahm Kench lane, which is super annoying to deal with. Like, you can't really stop them from pushing, and it's just such a safe lane. But that actually opened up for Braum, which is Noscaren's, old favorite pick. It's good against the Tahm Kench. So it gave a winning lane to Roccat, and also a lane that was really good later in the game at stopping any mid lane control from Splyce, which is what you need if you want to play split push. So I really feel like this bottom lane made it really difficult for Splyce to actually play their comp, which forced the game into just team fighting.
So basically, Splyce did follow kind of the win conditions you guys set up for them before the game, where it was all about Odwamne, getting him on a split pusher.
Yeah, they took those win conditions and then went even a little bit further with them, because not only did they go for one split pusher with Odwamne, but also, as I mentioned, Niski on that LeBlanc had the ability to pressure out inside lanes.
Yeah, and Odwamne won his lane by like 50 CS. He was always able to be a threat whenever a split push could have been set up. It was just hard for him to do. On the Roccat side...
You said, I do not want to see them in late game no matter what. They do not listen to you, the Fish Show.
Let's first take a look at as you highlighted, the pre-game win conditions, which they did not follow at all because they did not try and do anything around Prophet in the early game. See the first line, get Prophet ahead. He was down 50 CS. Nope. What's the second line, Ender?
Do not go to late game.
Right.
That's it.
So they draft full late game. They obviously then go to late game. And man, they don't know what to do in the late game. So once we saw the draft, we actually had to change the win conditions for Roccat, which again is not something we wanted to do, but we had to suddenly change it onto, okay, you have the Varus pick, so okay, protect and win bot lane. They did.
Yeah.
1 up. Control wards, we love it, push in, it's great. Lethality Varus pretty overpowered in lane as well.
Yeah.
Second line, now you have to go to late game, you actually execute the team fights, and they can't fulfill this win condition.
They couldn't. Let's see how that played out in the game. Wow. Let's see how that played out in the game, because despite all of this, they did protect bottom lane very well. They even got ahead in the early game. Their first 2 kills we're going to take a look at once again in the mid lane. We got that Braum who can cleanse off the arrow, and then they re-engage.
Yeah, and this was actually Splyce using the pressure of the side lanes to try and make a play. It didn't happen, whereas Blanc here has no ward spotting him out on this approach, finds a flank to catch out Kabe and Kasing in the mid lane, because they're always playing on the back foot, because they're against a super strong duo that Roccat drafted.
And after this fight, I tweeted, now Roccat can show us their late game. They should not be able to drop this game here. They have great setup to stop 1-3-1 with this winning mid lane. Because of the Varus, they protected him. He won his lane. They have a great late game team fight as well. This is the moment for Roccat to show that I was wrong in my pre-game win conditions, and the new ones were the correct ones.
But somehow you always turn out to be right, because it started going to the wayside for Roccat. If we take a look at the next team fight, this is where the game started to scale, and then actually Roccat should still be in a pretty good position, but the team fight just didn't go in their favor.
I mean, they would if they didn't spend 2 ultimates onto a Tahm Kench, who you had a stopwatch, then they use the Ornhorn onto just Odwamne on the top side. That means they have no spells to actually participate in this fight, and Splyce are able to stall out for that re-engage.
And Odwamne, obviously, the big hero with the initial engage, and then it's Kasing time.
Oh yeah, Kasing flashes to save Kabe right there. And then, even at the back end of this fight, Kabe gets into a little bit of trouble after getting the kill. You see, Kasing channels the ultimate to 2 inches away from him on the screen. Kabe can jump right on in there and get out free.
Now, I don't want to underplay this here, because when we were watching this in the cast room, Ender, you lost a word I'm not going to say. I have never seen you so excited about a champion interaction. So let's take a look again at Tahm Kench and how he saved Kabe. You screamed, I've never seen anyone do this, and I always want them to do it.
I was literally screaming back there, because I think this is an underused mechanic on Tahm Kench, because as long as he doesn't get hit by any damage, he can channel that ultimate and jump out. And if he actually recasts it immediately, he can't be CC'd as he's going down, but someone can click on it. In this case, Kabe jumps out freely.
And again, the really cool thing about it is his W, the Devour, is obviously on cooldown. So that's the only way for him to save the Ashe in this situation. So you end up having almost a double Devour situation. And then actually W was ready. A couple of seconds later, he could use another Devour. So he got 3 in there.
And just imagine the team fight too, the comms going on, because he's trying to set up this play where he doesn't have control. He's ulting out, he's screaming, Kabe, get in me. We're jumping out of here. We're trying to escape. And it was just really impressive
It was
stuff.
beautiful, and if we look at the context of the game, it may have been very important as well, because this is where Roccat, unfortunately, lost the plot completely. They lost that first fight, then they gave up the Baron to Splyce, and it all turned on its head.
And that's kind of the Roccat story. They had full control of the map. They could do almost anything, but when you blow all these ultis, or sorry, engages onto the Tahm Kench, and then you let your AD carry get hit by the Mega Gnar that jumps in, it just sets up a bad fight for you. But obviously, I think there's a lot of credit to Kasing specifically for that one, and Odamne. Following fights, I still felt like Roccat could win. I kept thinking, no, it's okay. They can still win in the late game. But every fight we got to see from here on and out was just Splyce favored.
Yeah.
And the issue was, as soon as you lose Baron against a composition that wants to push all these different lanes, you are just going to lose so much gold. They were down 10,000 gold coming into this final team fight.
I think this is what you mean when you say they could have still won,
Yes.
right? But then Nisqy does a great flank, honestly, and gets 3 kills in the mix.
So this is the kind of situation where you're already behind and you rush Elder Drake the moment it's open, and you obviously can't protect your flanks. You don't have any vision around you. You don't 100% know where the blanks come, but you have to take that risk because look at the gold graph at this point. Like, you're like 10k down, and it was actually Splyce starting the Elder Drake. But I gotta say, over the last 2 weeks, Roccat has tried to get that Elder Drake a couple of times, and every time they've gotten it, they immediately lose the game right after. Like, they must be the worst feeling ever of like, guys, maybe there's a chance, and no, we don't have a chance.
I want to see win rates of when Roccat finishes a game without Elder Dragon ever spawning compared to
100%.
games where Elder
it out of
Dragon
the game.
does spawn, because that's late game and it's not good.
Yeah, and all jokes aside, this is really bad for their chances in playoffs, and it's now happened 3 times in a row, which is the most unfortunate timing and occasion for them. On the other side, it's great for Splyce in the race for playoffs. It's great for Oduamne because he's player of the game with 50% of the votes. Nisqy had a great late game move. Kasing had that one Tahm Kench move, but overall, Oduamne was instrumental in the team fights.
I think so. I mean, great laning phase, obviously, on the Gnar into insane team fighting, as you said. And we kept highlighting this, like, they wanted to almost avoid team fighting with their comp, but they couldn't because of the Varus pick in the mid. So they had to team fight. And then you had to outplay a composition that was actually better than yours. So that was very impressive from Splyce.
Yeah, and it was even more impressive because he went for a pure split push build with Black Cleaver into the Blade of the Ruined King, got a Wit's End.
More
and
damage than Mega Gnar.
later on.
Bam!
Got so much damage when you throw him into the wall, but he's so squishy too that it meant he had to make that engage really pay off because he was going to die pretty much instantly after.
And this is probably where the experience of someone like Oduamne or Gnar pays off because he knows how far he can go.
This is why you sign Oduamne and not a rookie top laner, because you know you can get something like this when you need to win a game that gets you into playoffs.
And that is exactly what they did. They won versus Roccat Splyce, and with that take a huge step towards playoffs. They also indirectly make Fnatic, or directly, however you want to look at it, make Fnatic and Misfits Gaming lock playoffs at least. That is not the biggest surprise that these two teams are in playoffs, but the battle for that bye in the top 2 is still very much open. It also makes the route of Roccat and Giants extremely difficult. The likelihood of them qualifying for playoffs has now fallen below 5%. Crazier things have happened, so we'll see what happens. And it also secures Vitality and Schalke at least a tiebreaker for playoffs. They could still lose that tiebreaker, but this is why we said beforehand, Splyce winning means that their chances are much more secure, and it also kind of locks the top 6 more in place. It's becoming very hard for Giants or Roccat to win now.
Because again, Splyce is the team that Giants and Roccat have to bump out of the playoff picture. They're the ones sitting in 6th right now, the gatekeeper. As you say, if Roccat loses that team, now it's not in their hands anymore. Giants really do need to win out to have that chance.
Let's have this conversation later after Giants play Fnatic. And if Giants win that game, suddenly the whole discussion around his top 6 luck,
reckless too.
it's starting
Also,
again.
it's based on 50-50 odds, and Splyce could go on an epic losing streak right now as well, right?
They lost to HK last week. Anything can happen.
We're just keeping the dream alive, but it does look pretty
Giants have to win, obviously.
Well, later tonight in Game 4, Reckless is going to make his return to the Fnatic lineup, as said, as they try and take down Giants, who are on their way towards a miracle run. But our next matchup is also a good one. Misfits Gaming versus H2K. See you in 3.5.
Okay, let's see if he can make this one happen. Goes over, gets the two-man shuffle up, and I don't care if you swallow the ash, you're going down, my friend. That is going to be one kill, first blood, swag in style. Kabi is going nowhere. Xerxes a little bit late to the party, missed the memo, it would appear. Horn's happening, Xerxes goes golden, but I think they're going to leave him out to dry here, and Hinkyu's taking him down, moving through, and the shuffle goes back, hop back into the belly of Kasing, and they're still going. This is an all-out brawl, and Xerxes is going to find Blank and Kabi, firing arrows as many ways as he can. Enough damage to take this down. It's going to be coming down to a smite fight, and it's secured by Momentum. Can they win the fight? Odoamne gets a Gnar over the wall, and in goes Niski to shut down Hikyu and Norskeren. That fight is lost. That game is lost. But you lose yourself the game. Splyce pull a most critical win in the race for playoffs.
Thank you.